Do you try to avoid GMOs in your diet?
I do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why is that?
Just the effects, I guess, on myself.
There's just a vibration with GMOs. For me personally, just something that I don't particularly want to put into my body.
What does GMO stand for?
Oh, man.
General modified ingredient, right?
I don't even remember.
Genetically modified.
I don't know. I know it's like some corn bad stuff, right? I know it's bad, but to be completely honest with you, I have no idea.
What is a GMO? Well, it's an organism that's been genetically modified. This means scientists combine the DNA of one or more organisms for some specific genetic feature. Usually this entails engineering plants with toxic bacteria that kill bugs that try to eat the genetically modified plant.
Humans have been genetically modifying plants and animals for thousands of years. Maybe a few of your crops had very good yields, maybe one of your wolves was especially loyal. So you did the smart thing and bred the plants and animals that had traits beneficial to you. Traits are just an expression of genes. So with each generation, those genes got more pronounced. After thousands of years, almost every single plant and animal around us is vastly different from its pre-domesticated state. If humans have been changing genes for millennia, what makes a so-called genetically modified organism, or GMO, different?
Genetic engineering has been around for 40 years and is one of the newer techniques.
So they're distinguishing genetic engineering, which happens in a laboratory, from the genetic changes that were brought about through crossbreeding and the history of this exercise going back to the dawn of agriculture.
We genetically modify our food, say by taking a gene from a fish and putting it in a tomato. We're creating a whole new species, one that's never existed on Earth before. So some would say, you've created a monster.
David Suzuki joins me in the studio. I want to ask you first, you've described our consumption of genetically modified food as a massive experiment. That's what science is about. Experiments. What's your primary concern about this one?
Well, the point I make is that we have no idea what the long-term consequences of these genetic manipulations will be on the public. There is no way that our health authorities can test all possible combinations and permutations over a large enough population over a long enough period to be able to say with a surety that they're harmless.
One of the reasons engineered foods are attacked so viciously is not because of the scientific consequences of their existence, but the economic and cultural consequences of placing so much power over our food supply into the hands of very few, very large companies.
In 1996, Monsanto introduced its genetically modified canola to Canada. A heavy storm during harvest time blew it onto Percy Schmeisser's fields. In August 1998, he was sued for illegally cultivating patented seeds from Monsanto. Two courts sentenced him to pay damages to Monsanto of roughly $100,000.
No one should control nature. No one should control life. No one should have that right to put patents on nature and life. As long as my wife and I have life within us, we will always go down to fight for the rights of farmers, always to be able to use their seed from year to year. No one should take that right away from anyone.
Every major scientific organization in the world, including the National Academy of Sciences, the European Food Safety Authority, and many other organizations, have concluded that the process of genetic engineering is no more risky than conventional breeding.
GMOs are everywhere in the US. Pretty much literally, 95% of sugar beets, 88% of corn, 94% of soybeans grown in the US contain traits like being insect resistant or herbicide resistant that were engineered into them. And some crops are genetically modified simply for human benefit. Around 500,000 children go blind every year because of a vitamin A deficiency. So a strain of rice has been developed that, unlike normal rice, contains enough vitamin A to keep children healthy.
The world eats 11 million pounds of food every day. A UN estimate suggests we'll need 70% more by 2050. We could grow that food by clearing more and more forest to create fields and pastures, and by using more pesticides. Or we find a way to do it on the land we've got right now with more effective methods like GM crops. could even modify plants to become super effective carbon collectors like the American chestnut tree, to mitigate and actually reverse climate change. With the tools we have today, our imagination is the limit.